A prominent theme in a lot of superhero stories is that anyone with a desire to do good can be a hero. While this is an inspiring idea, it also means that there are a good number of Marvel superheroes who really aren't that super. Today, the Binger is going to go through the least superpowered characters in Marvel's vast collection of heroes. If you're at all familiar with the world of comics, chances are you've heard of the Punisher. Frank Castle is a vigilante after his family's passing in senseless mob violence. When he's not avenging them, the Punisher more or less acts as a mercenary and takes down anyone he believes to be a menace to society. All in all, he's probably one of the most popular anti-heroes in the world of comics. His popularity is especially impressive when you consider his complete lack of superpowers. Armed with only his extensive military training and a ridiculous number of guns, the Punisher enforces his own harsh justice upon anyone he decides is a villain. He first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man issue 129 in 1974. Although his gimmick of being basically a doomsday prepper who passes judgment on society plays quite a bit differently today. A big part of the Punisher's appeal is that he's just a guy going up against various degrees of superpowered foes. He's cunning enough to fight Spider-Man to a standstill and resilient enough to battle the Hulk for a bit. The Punisher is definitely not super and just barely a hero, but he's a long-standing fan-favorite character and his lack of powers only makes him more interesting. Hawkeye, or Ronin, or whatever Clint Barton is calling himself nowadays, is a major character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Part of the series since the original Thor film, Hawkeye manages to keep up with the other Avengers despite a complete lack of superpowers. All he has going for him is his expert marksmanship, high-tech bows and arrows, and a pretty cool samurai sword. Hawkeye has been a major player in all of the Avengers films and defended the Infinity Gauntlet from Thanos for a good while in Endgame. Even if he is the butt of a lot of jokes about the MCU characters, he's still doing his best to save the world. Although he did win over a lot of his biggest critics when the movies revealed his home life and made him more of a family man. He's arguably the least super of all the Avengers, but he's still doing his best to protect the world. Thankfully, we'll be able to see more of the character than ever before in the upcoming television series on Disney+. Although, it might be a bit tough for the show to walk back the character's over-the-top sleeve tattoo and faux hawk. Then again, an entire episode dedicated to Hawkeye getting a new haircut and going through tattoo removal treatment does sound like a weird and fun half an hour of TV. The first female Avenger and one of the few members of the team without any kind of superpower, Black Widow does her best to protect the world from global-level threats. Natalia Romanova first appeared in the Marvel Comics in 1964 and specializes in espionage missions. While we haven't really seen her fully utilize her spy skills in the Marvel Cinematic Universe yet, that will hopefully change in the rumored Black Widow film. Although the status of her character is a bit vague after Endgame, so whether or not the movie is actually happening is a bit up in the air. Although Black Widow doesn't have any superpowers to speak of, her fighting skills are almost unmatched, and she has a solid collection of high-tech weaponry. Her cunning use of deception also makes her one of the smartest people in any given room. A big part of the reason fans want to see a solo Black Widow movie so badly is because it'd be a lot of fun to see her outwit and outmaneuver an entire organization of bad guys. It might be a bit up in the air at the moment, but Black Widow is a fantastic, grounded hero and more than deserves her own movie. Daredevil, the superhero who has more in common with a bat than Batman, is one of the least superheroes. Although he's blind, Matt Murdock's other senses are heightened to such a degree that he can easily combat most other villains with more grounded abilities. When fighting crime, Daredevil utilizes a variety of martial arts techniques and his signature baton. Disguised as a cane in his civilian life, this weapon has a hidden grappling cable and hook which he can use to traverse New York City or battle his enemies. Granted, some interpretations of the character enhance his senses to an impossible degree, but more recent interpretations of the character have made his abilities more believable. This is appropriate as Daredevil usually takes on more local-level threats like organized crime and hitmen. Unfortunately, Daredevil's track record outside of the comics is a bit less than consistent. The 2003 Daredevil movie featuring Ben Affleck in a leading role was middling at best. While many enjoy the Netflix series tied to the MCU, its future is currently up in the air with the upcoming launch of the Disney Plus streaming service. As far as less than superheroes go, though, Daredevil will always be one of the best. Okay, now we're starting to get into the territory of superheroes who aren't super and probably shouldn't even be heroes. The Thunderer, real name Jerry Carstairs, first appears in 1941. He was a radio operator who learned that a radio station was secretly broadcasting messages to anti-US sleeper agents during World War II. Now, at this point, most people would report their findings to the authorities and call it a day, but not Jerry Carstairs. Instead, he builds a costume with a built-in voice amplifier. Then he goes to the radio station that's broadcasting the messages and literally shouts at the building until it crumbles, foiling their evil plot. That's right, the Thunderer's whole shtick is that he has a costume that lets him yell really, really loudly. Having never really taken off as a character, the Thunderer's adventures would be rather few and far between. He would fight a dwarf named Gore, who was born with several physical anomalies, and used Morse code bombs to attack whoever he perceived to be attractive individuals. That Thunderer story is pretty problematic and ableist for a number of reasons, though, and it's probably for the best that it's mostly forgotten. Phil Grayfield was a former NFL player who became unable to play after an injury. He tried working as a sports writer for a while, but when that didn't stick, he donned an indestructible football uniform and became NFL SuperPro. To this day, he remains one of the worst and most poorly conceived characters in the Marvel Universe. The NFL SuperPro comic series only ran for 12 regular issues, and it's rumored that the duo who created the comic only did so to score free NFL tickets. Making the character even stranger is the fact that it's almost impossible for him to appear in any new comics today. Licensing issues with the National Football League all but totally prevent the character and his name from appearing in any media that they don't control. So essentially, NFL SuperPro is a poorly received joke of a character that can't even appear in any new comics without the NFL suing the people involved. That's not very super, just like the character's complete lack of powers. At the very least, NFL SuperPro will go down in comic book history as one of the strangest and most poorly received characters in the history of the medium. Unless certain villains can only be defeated with bad puns, the Phone Ranger isn't super whatsoever. A.G. Bell worked as a telephone repairman and one day discovered a phone that had been modified by an advanced alien race. He repurposed the technology to create his absurd costume, which can connect to virtually any phone line. Using these powers, he monitors emergency calls and aids those callers before first responders are able to arrive. Considering the Phone Ranger's suit is made more or less obsolete with the invention of the cell phone, this would-be hero isn't super by any definition of the word. Strangely though, he's been around for some of the bigger events in Marvel's history. During a fourth wall-breaking storyline where villains attack the Marvel Comics office building, the Phone Ranger defends the building. In this confrontation, his bizarre suit does come in handy as it stops a bullet fired by the Scourge that would have ended him otherwise. He was also around during the famed Civil War crossover storyline. He was arrested by Spider-Man and Iron Man after he refused to comply with the recently instituted Superhero Registration Act. So while he does help pad out the Super Marvel universe, the Phone Ranger is most definitely not super himself. Buford Hollis, also known as his hero alias Razorback, does technically have a superhuman ability. However, it's so lame and his costume is so ridiculous that it's impossible to call him super. Razorback has the ability to instantly know how to drive any vehicle he finds. That's a somewhat interesting power until you realize that someone could take a few night classes and learn how to drive most vehicles. Furthermore, his hero name doesn't align with his powers whatsoever. Razorback is a colloquialism for a feral pig, and Buford's costume is clearly inspired by these animals. However, nobody associates pigs with the ability to control any vehicle. Also, the boar mantle on his costume can apparently discharge electricity, which also doesn't align with any other element of his character. Razorback is just a weird hodgepodge of traits and abilities that don't have anything to do with each other. It's as though someone pulled a bunch of character traits out of a hat and created Razorback from those random ideas. This hero isn't super, he's just frustrating and fills out the increasingly bizarre collection of D and C-list characters in the Marvel Comics universe. Carlton Lefroige, also known as Hindsight Lad or just Hindsight, tried to pass off his most annoying tendency as a superpower in the Marvel Comics. Hindsight Lad has no superpowers to speak of and instead would only contribute to his team through some light tech support and by pointing out how any given situation could have gone better. Yeah, this guy is basically just Captain Hindsight from South Park. Except he's an actual hero, instead of a thinly veiled means to mock news pundits and comic book heroes. It's pretty obvious that Hindsight Lad is one of the least superheroes in Marvel's catalog of crime fighters. Then again, He also plays a pretty significant role in the famed Civil War storyline. Hindsight plays a big role in escalating the conflict between superhuman groups, as well as general society's view of superhumans. After his former hero team, the Warriors, accidentally harm a large number of innocent people while fighting villains, Hindsight doxes them. This allows angry civilians to target the heroes in their everyday lives and further divides heroes on the issues of creating a hero registry. So all in all, Hindsight is barely a superhero, definitely not super, and nearly tore the world of Marvel Comics apart. That's not a great combo. There's no denying that Steve Rogers is an incredibly superhero. Pushed to the absolute limits of human ability thanks to a super soldier serum, he defends the innocent as Captain America. However, he's not the only Captain America. Sam Wilson, also known as Falcon, took on Captain America's mantle in both the comics and at the end of Avengers Endgame. Wilson's time as the hero offers an interesting look at the idea of patriotism and American society today. He unfortunately doesn't have the same superhuman abilities as the original Captain America. The least super Captain America would have to be Roscoe Simmons, though. After Rogers abandoned the mantle, Simmons stepped up to fill the role. While many admired his spirit, his lack of superpowers led to a swift and brutal defeat at the hands of the Red Skull. This thoroughly demonstrated the disconnect between everyday heroes and superheroes in the world of Marvel Comics. Even if Simmons is now the poster boy for less than superheroes, he did get a shout-out in Avengers Endgame. When Rogers infiltrated a S.H.I.E.L.D. base, the uniform he wore had Roscoe stitched into it. For a superhero that isn't super at all, that's more than he probably could have asked for. What did you think of our list of the least super Marvel superheroes? Did we leave anyone off that should have been mentioned? Please let us know in the comments section down below. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe to The Binger so you can catch all of our fantastic upcoming videos.